Here we go. Okay, let me turn this up. Okay. Okay, so now everybody make sure that your microphones are turned on. We think we have it set up where it'll come through the speakers.
When you speak into your microphone.
You gotta hold it up and speak into it because it does amplify. Who said that? Why am I? Oh, okay. Okay, so there you heard Dave talk, so it'll come through. He's annoying, but it came through. Okay, we are going to be in Matthew chapter 2. We were in Luke chapter 2 last week. And in Luke chapter 2 last week, we spoke about the circumcision of Jesus, and we got Jesus born the week before. And we had the shepherds and the angels coming down. Last week we had the circumcision of Jesus, which didn't happen at the temple, just happened wherever they, circumcisions are us, or whatever the place is called. But then he had to be when Mary was declared ceremonially clean after those 8 days and the 33 days and whatever. They had to go to the temple for the presentation, and we met Simeon there and Anna, and they made statements over Jesus, and that was it. That's a quick summary. But right after that, in Luke, it said, so when they had performed all things according to the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own city, Nazareth. And the child grew and became strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. And there's a whole bunch missing there. That's at the end of Luke 2. Because when we go to Matthew 2, see, because this says after they went to the temple, they went back up to Nazareth, way up to Galilee. Okay. But when we get to Matthew 2, it says something different. Okay. But anyway, so now it says in verse 1 of Matthew chapter 2, it says, now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. So you guys all know this story, right? Okay. We've seen it all in our nativity scenes and like that. Let me read through the passage. Okay. So, in fact, I'll tell you what. So you like one of you. I'll read it out of my Bible. That way I don't turn the pages all around all the time. Okay, so we're going to read through chapter 2. Where's that begin? Okay, there. Okay, so from the east came to Jerusalem. Wise men came from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who was born of the King of the Jews? For I saw his star when it rose, and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of people, he inquired of them, where is the Christ to be born? They told him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And when he set And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may come and worship him." After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshiped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way.
Okay. So on the handout that I would have had,
That some couple people do have. We talked last week, and I mentioned that Jesus is the main character in all the stories. It's like having a play, you're in the theater, and Jesus is the actor. He's the main character. Anybody else who comes in and out of it is just extras in the thing. And anything that is describing or talking about is background scenery. And Jesus is the main thing. So I listed here the cast of characters, in the story that we read. You have one, the wise men, the Magi. Okay. You have Herod the king. You have Jesus starring as the King of the Jews. Yeah. You have the chief priests, the scribes, the star, and you have Mary, the mother of Jesus. Okay, and that's our cast of characters. As we go through, we'll talk about each one of them, a little bit. So anyway, so it started out in those first two verses, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem. We already spoke about Bethlehem and the importance of, that it had been the birthplace and home of, King David, and that meant a lot to them, aside from the Micah prophecy. It just meant a lot to them. But it says that in the days of King Herod, we'll get into who Herod is. Behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. We'll get into them, saying, here's the thing, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. You got to picture the scene. You got to picture the scene the way I picture the scene, which isn't the way you ever see the scene. Well, what do you see? You see the three wise men riding on their camels. And they follow the star, and they end up in Jerusalem, and they go, where is this one called the King of the? And I wonder if it's really like that. You would think, well, Diane's shaking her head. She's listened to me too much. No, but I figure then that there's a large troop of people. I mean, there's a whole bunch of wise men. They've got people with them and stuff like that. And I think that they're riding, whatever they're riding, whether it's horses or camels, I think that they're galloping through the land. I mean, to picture cowboys, riding into town. Yeah. I think everywhere that they go, where is this one called the King of the Jews? I mean, like in a loud voice, they're trying to find out where he is, because they're following the star, but they don't know where the star's taking them. When you see a star, you figure, okay, this must be the place. Like that. So I think it's more of an excited moment, for that. I had to make my screen bigger here. Can't see where my thing is. Yeah. Anyway, but that's the way I picture it. And I picture them coming into town and making a cloud of dust in Ohio silver, going all the way. But you can picture it. You can picture it any way that you want. So it says, for we have seen his stars. Now here's the thing. So we see the wise men. Who are the wise men? Where do they come from? Who are these wise guys? Why weren't they called the wise guys? What's that? Yeah. So, and I tell you, you can Google, you can find 100 different stories, because it doesn't say, it just says they came from the east. Now, here's what we've got in the east. And I think we talked about this in Master's Men when we were studying Daniel a couple of years ago. You know, when the Jews were taken into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon, okay, a whole bunch of them were taken. I mean, a whole bunch of them. And they were there for 70 years, and they lived in the communities. And in 70 years, you can have a lot of kids, and the families grow, and people die off, and stuff like that. When they were told they could go home, if you read the text, very few of them went home. They stayed in Persia. You know, they stayed in that Iraq, Iran, you know, area there. And they stayed there forever. They stayed there up until the 1979 Islamic Revolution. You know, there was a huge Jewish population in those areas. I think these wise men, they weren't Jewish. They were probably Zoroastrians, but I'm sure that they were influenced by the Jews. They intermingled with the Jews. They knew what the Jewish writing said. Pardon? There were scholars, there were astronomers. Do the microphone though when you do talk. So, yeah, we don't know. We just know that they're wise enough to follow a sign. Maybe they heard a voice, and they're wise enough to follow the voice, and then follow the star, and know the question. Know the question to ask about this one that we heard of. But see, they probably were influenced. How many people live in America who are not Christians who know the Christian story? Well, why not? They all watch Charlie Brown's Christmas Story. Yeah. No, I mean, so yeah, that's the way that, that's the way that it is that the people know by latching on to, the people and their cultures and, like that. And I think that's who these guys were. I think that they were sensitive enough to answer the call and go. Now, it does say at the end, when it came time for them to leave, that, what did it say, having heard a voice or having had a dream? Yeah, that they knew not to go back. So there's some spiritual contact that's there. But it's not that they're believers. It's that God's using them. God's using them in the Jesus story. And it's like I said last week when I was talking about characters in a movie or a play, even if you're the most minor character, but you're the one who gets shot and killed in a mystery movie, you're still pretty important, because the rest of the story is going to revolve around what happened to you. Diane.
Then reading with the scholars, he's pretending to be a devoted person. He got them to tell them exactly when the birth announcement star arrived. Then he told them that the prophecy about go find this child, leave no stone unturned, and as soon as you find him, send word and I'll join you. Well, that's why they went back. They didn't want to get.
Well, no, but it says that if you read past that, after they give the gifts to Jesus, they saw a dream, or they had a dream, and that's why they didn't go back. Yeah. Right. Yeah, so they have that interaction with God, even though they're not believers. People get used for God's purposes. Jonah runs away from going to Nineveh, like that. Who did God use? Not the whale, okay, not the big fish. Who did God use to get Jonah to do what he wanted him to do? Yeah, the other people on the ship, because they took him and they threw him overboard. So these are the things you got to watch for when you're reading scripture, is who are these background people? That they're there actually doing something, whether they know it or not. They're being used by God to do God's work, do God's will. And we would hope that we would be the same. Now, these wise men, they may not know that after all that they did. They may just thought, man, I just know from hanging around these Jews here in Persia, something big's going to happen. We're kind of astrologers. We're following this star, you know, and then when they're done, they're done. We saw their king. We worshiped their king and on our way. We have no indication that the wise men were necessarily religious. They weren't Jewish. We have nothing that says they followed Christ. I mean, other than they recognized him and worshiped him. End of story. That's as far as, you know, that's as far as we can, you know, that we can go with that. So, but here's, oh, go ahead.
Did you consider that then the first time the Gentiles came to Christ?
Yeah. Oh, in fact, thank you for bringing that up. That just shows that from the very beginning. So we had the prophecy from the statement from the shepherds at the time of the shepherds about the Jews and the Gentiles. And this is a case of all of a sudden you see Gentiles, you know, again, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody outside of this class always thinks that, you know, God's plan was all just for Jews, and he'll get to the Gentiles later. But speaking of Jonah, there was him having Jonah going and preaching salvation in God to the Gentiles, you know, and perhaps having the Jews stay in Persia was his way of having them preach his word to the Gentiles. And then here we see, yeah, the Gentiles coming in, at least responding to that thing. One other point about Jesus being the center of all this. This was a quote that I found from Charles Spurgeon, the old English Baptist preacher in England. You know, if you ever want to read his sermons, they're in book form. I think there's 100 volumes of his sermons in case you're looking for something to read. But he says, a stir begins as soon as Christ is born. He has not spoken a word. He has not wrought a miracle. He has not proclaimed a single doctrine. But when Jesus was born, at the very first, while as yet you hear nothing but infant cries and can see nothing but infant weakness, still his influence upon the world is manifest. When Jesus was born, there came wise men from the east and so on. There is infinite power even in an infant savior. You know, Jesus just laying there. If Mary's carrying him around town like a papoose or something, Jesus is God and things are happening. I can't tell you all the things because the Bible doesn't tell us, you know, all the things. All it says is that he grew up and, you know, matured in great ways and, you know, like that. So even as an infant. So it says, in the days of Herod. Who knows about Herod? I mean, who knows about Wanda? You want to say something, or you just know about it? He was a murderer and a builder. He did murder people, murdered a bunch of his own family, and he did build the temple. You know, the first one, Ray, do your microphone.
Well, he was appointed king by the Romans. He was somewhat of a Jew, but not a practicing Jew. And like you said, he murdered most of his family because he feared them taking over power. And there were 6 Herods in the Bible.
6 what?
6
Herods, yeah, they're all lineage.
He's the first one, Herod the Great. But there was
Right, and we'll see Herod Antipas and other ones that are there. Okay.
we know him as Herod the Great and Herod of the Christian story that
Right.
they killed
Right.
a 2-year-old and younger. That's about all of them. Other than he died.
Yeah, and then he died.
Oh,
Didn't we have that in all the genealogies? Yeah, he lived to be 500 years and then he died. You know,
he
like
reigned 37.
4 BC. And the importance of the dating of Herod, because we know the dating of Herod, and he died in 4 BC, and we know that Jesus was born before Herod died. So boom, you get to lock that. Let me tell you who Herod is. Because that's the story that we hear about Herod. And he was all of those things. Like that. But Herod was really a great Roman like warrior, military, government official. Okay, we always think that he's some kind of lackey that got appointed. Okay, here's Judea. They're just a bunch of, beggar leaders there, and we're not going to do anything with it. One of, the story of Julius Caesar? Give you a history lesson. Okay, so Julius Caesar, Julius Caesar, now he was a warrior king. I mean, he'd go out and fight the battles, I mean, we don't do that. Our presidents are commander in chief. They don't go fight the battles. None of them. George Washington, but they don't go out and fight the battles. He went out and he'd fight the battles, but then people would plot against him. And if you know the story of the Ides of March, is that those backstabbers, oh yeah, that's right. That's how they killed him. No, but anyway, they killed, I think it was in 44 BC, they killed Julius Caesar. This will go to the Herod point. And so there was 4 guys that killed him. And the one guy who avenged Caesar's death was Mark Antony. Anybody know Mark Antony? Huh? Cleopatra. That's right. Look at how this all works together. And in fact, we even saw Cleopatra's name one time when we were going through these people, when we were talking about those interim periods in the book of Daniel, as it was projecting history. So Mark Antony was, I don't know if they were ever married, you don't know. I know she had kids by somebody else. It said that he sired, in the thing I was reading, he sired 3 children with her. But those are kind of joint things. He's Roman, she's Egyptian, and they're doing, I know that he didn't see those kids till they were 13 when she decided to present them to him as his children so that they could attain his name. Here's the point. Mark Antony and Herod, way back when, we're talking 40 BC, we're best friends. Cleopatra had him over to the house, company, I mean, he was up there. He was, he just wasn't some, because that's what I always thought. He was just some kind of lackey. What are we going to do with him? He gets in our way. Let's send him to Judea and let him be king there. But he was
He was only 15 at that point.
when?
He was 15 years old when he was the second native procreator.
Well, he started 37. He was born, what, in 70?
Native king of Judea. And at age 15, Herod appointed to the government of Galilee.
I thought he was born in 70, but I could be wrong. I don't remember. But anyway, but the point is that he was somebody. Here's the reason I bring these people up. And as we look into history, because you want to put these things in history. This isn't just some religious event happening amongst people that nobody knows of. And these happening in history, it's happening with powerful people, and God's got all these things going in the Roman Empire. And then you got Judea, this big, and he's working his work through all of those people, whether they be shepherds, whether they be astrologers, whether they be kings. He's moving everybody to do his will. So anyway, so that's who Herod is and what he was doing. So it said, in the days of Herod the king. So what happened in the Herod the king? Wise men from the east came to Jerusalem and saying, where has been born the king of the Jews? For we have seen his star. What's that all about? Now think about it. I mean, I went out this morning. I just wanted to check this out. Seriously, I did. I went outside about 4:30 in the morning, looked up at the sky. And I thought, well, there's the stars. One thing about living here versus Southern California, in Southern California, you'd never have a star to follow because you just can't see them. There's so many, it's either cloudy or there's so much light. And I see the star. How would I know? Even if you saw a star moving, you ever see the space shuttle go over? It's like a star moving, right? Okay, but even if you saw that, you know, how would I know what to do? Would I follow it? Say that was the star. Where would I follow it to? I mean, it's going, you know, like this, and you know, so is it a star?
The Magi were told in a dream.
What's that?
The Magi, they were told in a dream.
They were told in the dream, they said they followed the star. They were told to follow the star. But how do you know? So that's what I'm saying. Is it a star?
Could have been Venus.
Yeah, but where do you follow it to? That's the thing. You know, we have this picture where it kind of parks over the house. And even if you came out of your house and you looked straight up and you saw Venus there, you know, how would you know that's the place? And then the star starts up and just moves. You know? Now I'm telling you, I don't have the answer. In case you were all sitting on the edge of your chairs waiting for me to give you a little, you know, for me to give you the give you the answer. What's that?
We don't know. We don't know if they were in the east or if the star was in the east.
Well, let's see what they say. It says wise men from the east. So we know they were from the east. Now, maybe the east, maybe the star, because it talks about the star being in the east. You know, maybe it was more easterly than them, but wouldn't that have taken them in the wrong direction? You know, and we're not made to know. If God wanted us to know, he would have given us, you know, now today, you'd say, and I had in a dream the GPS coordinates to Joseph and Mary's house. And we followed those, you know, GPS coordinates to go there. Somehow this, I mean, it means something. I just don't know if I know what it means. Anybody else have a good guess? What's that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
We don't say the three because of the three brethren.
Right, no.
A bit more than-
And see, and they give them names. I know one's Balthadar or something like that. And anyway, they got names. Yeah, where they come up with the names, you don't know. There's a whole bunch we don't know because people always have to fill in the gaps. You know, we don't like gaps in the, you know, we don't like gaps in the story. Diane.
You're gonna go outside and look at the star, and it's supposed to follow the star. Wonder, you know, we have the big difference with the cave and the big star in. Okay, everybody in the world can see the North Star. So if you're supposed to follow the star, wouldn't it stay first? And then you go, it wouldn't be fun.
Right, but well, let's even say to that, it still doesn't tell us how they went. You know, I mean, even if we're watching the stars going around, but it's really us going around. You know, how do you do it? Hey, remember, I got the star listed here in the cast of characters. You know, because that star is an actor in the story. We just don't know, you know, we just don't know what they knew. But I think they knew through divine intervention that they knew and that they were wise men. Yeah.
Recently, like, you know, go out between 2 and 4 and you're gonna see the blue moon or red moon. That was kind of, to me, in my mind, like that was put there, it was something markedly different
right.
than anything else that had been in the sky for however long it was there, but then, you know.
Well,
and
it was
if
the
we
same,
only
it was the
pointed
same,
one
it was the same moon
every
though.
thou-
But it was the same, but it was the same moon.
yeah,
It was
same
just in a
thing.
different thing. But see, the thing is that, so say that it said, and I saw a vision to follow the blue moon. Well, wait, where would you follow? Yeah, but there it is. Where would you follow it to? Yeah, that's the thing. So I think it's a special sign from God. You know, it says in Matthew 24, you know, when it says that what is it? The sun will go black and the moon will do something and the stars will fall out of the sky. How do stars fall out of the sky? And where do they fall? And where do they fall to? Isn't it all sky up and down? And, you know, I mean, the people right now who are in Australia and it's nighttime and they're hanging upside down like they do, right? But isn't that sky down up to them, but down to, I mean, it's the imagery of something God's doing. And I think that's probably where this, you know, now not to correlate it to those stars, but just the way that they use language, Joe.
Now, they've just announced that the new telescope that they have up there in space, been watching a section of space that was full of stars. Now there's a whole area that's totally vacant and dark. The stars are gone.
Where'd it go?
They fell out of the sky.
Maybe they cleaned the lens and it was just kind of dust on the lens that they were, you know, that they were looking at. You know, we don't know, and I don't want to go so deep into that, but it's just that somehow God used the wise men to do his work, and he used a star to get them there. And I doubt that star's ever been. I'll do Ray, and then let me do Denny, then Ray.
I think it's some magic.
Yeah.
They would recognize the new star in the sky right on.
Well, you know what? And I don't know that, you know, I guess you'd have to look up the word to find out what it is that they use, or maybe that's the only word that they could describe of the light that they saw. You know, we don't know. I mean, we don't know. It's just the idea that it was close and it was moving and it was directional. I don't think we've ever seen a star, you know, like that. Ray, and then we'll move on.
Well, the Magi were following the star, but when they got to Bethlehem, or when they got to King Herod's astrologers or
Right.
soothsayers knew from what prophecy had told them that the Christ would be born in Bethlehem. So they, you know, like they pulled over to a gasoline station.
Right.
How do we get to Bethlehem?
Oh, that's what I said. That's what I said earlier. I think everywhere they went, hey, where is this one called born called the King of the Jews? And they end up in Jerusalem and they say the same thing. Yeah, you know, I don't, because they weren't going to Jerusalem. We don't think, it doesn't say like that. And then they got redirected by the prophecy. So how unusual is this? Okay. I found a note in one of my commentaries on Matthew by R.T. France. He was an Anglican priest, wrote a commentary on, he died about 10 years ago. Talking about that the same incident was reported in 66 AD as Magi came to give honor to Nero. Okay. I had to look this one up after reading it, his commentary. Well, no, I read it somewhere else. Take it back. I read it somewhere else and it said France. So I knew R.T. France had written a commentary. So I have the commentary. So I looked at the commentary. If you're ever looking at it, it's footnote 174 on his chapter on the Magi. He's talking about these visitors who came. The visitors were King Tiridates of Armenia, plus 3 local Parthian princes. Their homage to the emperor was motivated by their reading of the stars. this is, I thought I wrote the guy's name down, where it came from. Anyway, Pliny, who was a Roman historian, he called them Magi, talking about the Nero incident. So who knows? Just remember that footnote 174, if you ever run into R.T. France's commentary on Matthew. Anyway, strange how, and remember where we started this from was this is in that interval that Luke didn't cover. You know, Luke had the presentation in the temple, and then it said when it was done, they gathered up and they went home to Nazareth. But there's a lot that's happening here because we're also going to have the slaughter of the innocents and the exodus to Egypt, and then waiting for Herod to die and, for to be saved. Then they go home. So all this stuff that's happening, is kind of in this, it's kind of in this interval. Okay, well, let's move on. So they came to, let me see how much I can get through on here. I thought I heard somebody saying something. Verse 2. Oh, verse 3. I'm sorry. Am I hearing things? Shh, shh. God's talking to me.
Yeah.
Give me a minute. What? Isn't that the way Samuel did it when he was a kid? And he heard he'd go to Eli. Was it Eli, I think? And he'd go, yes, what do you want? And he goes, I didn't say anything. Go back to bed.
Yeah.
Hey, what? Yeah. He goes, wow, maybe that's God talking. Better go back and, listen. So if I zone out a little bit, me and God are having a conversation here. He might be telling me to shut up. Matthew 2, that's the New Testament. I'm helping you. It says in verse 3, when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Now he's troubled because we're talking about he's kind of an insecure guy. Richard Nixon, and I've read tons on Richard Nixon. I mean, I've probably no, seriously. But most powerful man in the world, but he's paranoid. I mean, he really was. He thought everybody was after him, had his enemies list. I mean, we gotta break in, we gotta steal these documents to find out what they're doing because we can't live without knowing what the other people are doing. So I just bring that up because Herod's that kind of guy, powerful guy, chop off your head, killed several of his own sons, because he didn't want them taking the throne. So when it says, when Herod was king and heard this, he was troubled. And then it says, and all Jerusalem with him. Why was Jerusalem troubled? Well, no, because they know that this guy's on a short fuse. You ever hear the statement, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody going to be happy? Yeah, and that's the thing. If Herod's not happy, it's going to be dread and doom on the rest of us. And so once word's out, I don't know how the word gets out, but once word is out that Herod is troubled, the people tremble. They just know this isn't going to be good. Even if he means that he's going to conscript more people to go fight a war for him to, defend himself. Those people are the ones who are going to have to, the ones that are going to have to, pay the price. So it says he was troubled and all Jerusalem was troubled with him. Let me see. In verse 4, it says, and when he gathered all the chief priests and scribes of his people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. And we'll get into more later as to who the chief priests are, who the scribes are, when we get further along, because then we'll get into who were the Pharisees, who were the Zealots, who were the Essenes, who were all of these, groups of leaders running around Jerusalem at the time. But just know the chief priests are probably guys who used to be the chief priests, the head priests. but they run through, cycles. And the scribes were like the lawyers. They were the ones who kept the books, made sure the law was followed, make sure the laws were interpreted properly. Yes, sir. But anyway, so thus it is written by the prophet. This is what they're saying. Again, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people, Israel. So, these guys knew where to go in the scripture. Think about it. If I came and I said, where's the next mayor of Lake Havasu City going to be born? How would we know? We wouldn't even know what to think, where to think. But here, when somebody comes to the chief priest, Herod doesn't know. But he knows, because he uses this chief priest like, palm reader at the down by the bridge. So he uses them that way. But they knew where to go. Pulled out their phone, Googled it, said, "Hey, says right here." Okay. So they could have just come back to him and said, in Bethlehem, but they read to Herod the prophecy. Okay. Now, like Ray said, he was, he came from an Edomite family, his lineage way, back, but he had Jews in his family, so he was considered Jewish, but he wasn't really a, religious Jew. Just doesn't know. But they read him the prophecy. You would think, you would think he'd say, "Really? I didn't know that." And he said, "Let's go check this out." But he doesn't go check it out. He leaves it up to the scribes. Don't even check it out. You'd think that the scribes or the chief priests would say, "Hey, when we're done with Herod here, I'm getting on my pony and I'm going to go check this out," because they do read the scriptures, and they didn't. And so the wise men, the Magi, they end up by going back, and Herod says to them, "Hey, when you find him, come on back to me. I want to be a part of this." And we know that he's got the nasty up his sleeve, to want to kill him. Ray.
I was going to find out who the prophet was that they were referencing in that 800.
You can't find which part.
Which prophet wrote 6 and that they're referencing. I was trying to find out who was the prophet.
It wasn't in Micah 5. Micah 5:2. I don't have it in my notes, but I seem to remember that because I'm a good believer, and I think it's Micah 5:2. Remember my thing. You'd ask a question, you don't know the answer, just shout out the answer with enough, confidence and force, and everybody will think, "Oh, I thought it was something different, but I guess he's right." Because did you find it?
Yeah, commentary that it was Micah 7 pictures earlier.
No, did you look up Micah?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Anyway, so whatever it is. The thing is that it's there, and that it was easy for people to find. It's no different today. You have a question, you can find, even if you can't open up the scripture and find it yourself, you can ask people, people that know more, you can Google. There's no reason not to, and when you're really scratching your head to find out what it is that you want to know, so. Oh, Micah 5:2, read it in your microphone so it'll come out the speakers. It should get real close, Swallow it.
But you,
Well, say it the best, all right, good, just go.
you, O Bethlehem, for too little to be among the clans of Judah. From you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from of old, from ancient days. Therefore he shall give them up till the time when he.
Close enough. That's the,
Ancient days.
yeah. Yeah, so that's what they're referring, what they're referring to. I'm sorry?
Good memory.
Uh-uh. I'm sure Linus told me that in his Christmas story. So let's see, what do we got? And then they'll finish this up. And so in verse 7, it says, then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star had appeared. So, he's putting it together, okay, the wise men said that they saw the star here at this time, so he's piecing it together. But he wants to know the timetable. So he says, from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me that I may come and worship him also. So he's trying to figure out what the timetable is. Now we'll get into next week, what they call the slaughter of the innocents, where he finds out, he's trying to pinpoint it. It's probably within the last 2 years. We're going to Bethlehem. We're going to kill all the children 2 years and younger. And that's the purpose that he wants to find out. That's who this guy is, like that. I mean, he's got a choice. Like I say, people don't recognize when they're having an encounter with God. And Herod was having an encounter with God, not directly, but through other people. He had a choice to make. I mean, imagine what it would have been like if he would have said, take me there. Hey, chariot rider, take me there. I want to see. And for some reason, he sees what the shepherds saw. He sees what the Magi saw. He sees what all the people throughout Jesus's ministry saw that made them bow down and worship him. But he did like what we see also is a lot of people that say no. And so he's stuck the way he's stuck, and other people, I wish I knew what, in God's eyes, what became of the Magi. It's like Pastor said today, well, they went, no, it said that they went home, and maybe that was the end of the story. But like Pastor said in the sermon today, it's not by what we do that we're saved, it's by the grace of God and his good mercy. And now remember, this is still before the cross. So things were done a little bit differently, like Abraham believed. Maybe these people are believing. I mean, it said that they bowed down and worshiped him. You don't know. Same thing with the Ninevites. Ninevites were given another 40 years. I would imagine those people there at that time were saved in that Old Testament way. But then Nineveh went back to what it was, and then it got destroyed. So again, these characters come onto the stage and they just walk across the stage, do what they're doing, what the script says for them to do, and they're gone. There's be hundreds of them. Okay. Any last questions? Any questions? Chris, you got anything? Howard, Linda, anything? Chris, good to see you here, and welcome back. Eugene. Oh, yeah.
They not gonna just have the star, no detour to Herod, right? They searched the sacred writings, the chief priests and the scribes and things. So the Magi learns something, Herod knows something, that even those chief priests and scribes probably were talking about with the other religious leaders. maybe Nicodemus or.
Oh, I see what you, yeah.
Working in a way that
Well,
we don't even know.
Right.
from the text.
yeah. Now, we may have said that before you came in, is that God uses these people, they probably have no idea that they're being used, but God's moving it around. That's why I read that part about Jesus when he's an infant, well, how the world's reacting. I mean, something's happening even when he's still an infant, still a baby. He hasn't even said a word, hasn't done anything, but just his presence. Yeah, it's amazing, you know, and what we do is we rush through these childhood stories because we want to get to the good stuff. We want to get to when he, you know, changes water into wine and heals people, you know, and throws pigs into the ocean, you know, and stuff like that. But this infant stuff, when he's helpless, you know, I mean, he's God wrapped up in a helpless baby body.
It's called charisma.
There you go. Yeah. One last thing.
So. Like, they find out in Bethlehem in 1905, but then the star appears again.
Yeah.
So like, we can just like make it blank for, you know, something off for a while,
Yeah.
like, maybe they didn't really need to go there.
Yeah.
If there's something going on there, is the word of God is living and active.
Yeah.
It's doing God's purpose,
Yeah.
whatever that would be.
Yeah. So the important part may not have been getting the not getting the Magi to Jesus, which is important, but it may have been getting the Magi first to Herod. You know, hey, somebody's got to tell Herod about this King of the Jews. Because you got to remember, Herod's going to die the next year, probably, you know. So, and then once the son comes along, he's not going to care. He's just caring about building his own thing. Okay, Dennis, then we're going to call it quits. Yeah, yeah. Like I say, you can look it up. I guarantee you, if y'all looked it up, if someone from every table looked up or Googled up or whatever the star, I guarantee you every table will come back with a different answer of what the star, you know, what the star was. So we don't want to get too dogmatic over what it was, other than it served its purpose. Okay, we be done. Let's close with Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Hey, let me ask Chris and Howard and Linda something. Were you guys able to hear the people at the table speak okay in their microphones?
Not really. Not really.
Okay, you know, we got a new setup. I mean, Joe set us up with something new. We got, so it comes through the speakers here in the room. I'll have to watch the video and see how it is. Okay, God bless you guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, Chris.
Bye, Howard.
See you. I'll talk to you. You'll Dennis.
Okay,
Real quick.
okay, I gotta get the.
I never did see that Mike pick this up.